The boy's mother heard a sound she would never forget. It was a long, flat beep that meant her son's heart had stopped beating. "No," she whispered. Then louder, "No. Please, no." But before we get to that terrible moment, let me tell you how it all began. His name was Tommy, and he was only 9 years old. He had brown hair that stuck up in the morning, and a smile that could light up a whole room. 3 weeks ago, he had been riding his bike, laughing with friends, and eating ice cream on hot summer days. Now he lay in a hospital bed, so still he looked like a sleeping statue. The sickness had come fast, like a thief in the night. One day, Tommy said his head hurt. The next day, he couldn't get out of bed. By the third day, his mom was rushing him to the emergency room, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. The doctors used big words that his mother didn't understand. They talked about his brain and infections and things that made her stomach twist into knots. All she knew was that her little boy was slipping away, and she couldn't stop it. But there was someone who refused to give up. Max. Max was Tommy's German shepherd. He had been Tommy's best friend since Tommy was 4 years old. They had grown up together. Max slept at the foot of Tommy's bed every single night. He waited by the door every day when Tommy came home from school. When Tommy was sad, Max would put his big furry head on Tommy's lap and look up at him with those deep brown eyes that seemed to say, "I'm here. I'll always be here." When the ambulance took Tommy away, Max had howled. It was a sound that made the neighbors stop and listen, a sound full of pain and fear. Tommy's mother had to leave Max with a friend because dogs weren't allowed in hospitals. But Max didn't understand rules. On the third night, when Tommy's breathing became weak and raspy, something impossible happened. The hospital security guard was making his rounds when he saw a large dog sitting outside the main entrance. The dog's eyes were fixed on the building, and he wouldn't move. "Shoo! Go on home," the guard said, waving his hands. Max didn't move. He just stared at the doors. The guard tried again. Nothing. Then something strange happened. A nurse who was leaving for the night recognized the dog. "That's Max," she said softly. "That's Tommy's dog. The little boy on the 4th floor. The guard scratched his head. "How did he get here? That's 5 miles from their house." Nobody knew, but Max had found his way through the dark streets, across busy roads, following something that humans couldn't see or smell or hear. Love had guided him, and love had brought him here. The nurse, whose name was Sarah, made a decision that could have gotten her fired. "Just for a few minutes," she whispered. "The mother looks like she's dying inside. Maybe seeing the dog will help." They snuck Max up the back stairwell. His nails clicked on the tile floors. When they reached Tommy's room, Max's ears perked up. He could smell his boy. He could hear that familiar heartbeat, even though it was weak and slow. Tommy's mother looked up from her prayers. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying. When she saw Max, she gasped, "Max, how did you?" But Max didn't wait for questions. He rushed to Tommy's bedside and carefully, gently, placed his head on the bed next to Tommy's hand. He whimpered softly, a sound of pure sadness. "I'm sorry," the nurse said. "I know we're not supposed to, but—" "Thank you," Tommy's mother interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you so much." The machines around Tommy beeped and blinked. There were tubes in his nose and needles in his arms. The sound of the breathing machine went whoosh, 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 pushing air into his lungs. Tommy's face was pale, almost white, and his lips had no color. The doctor had pulled Tommy's mother aside that afternoon. "You should prepare yourself," he had said quietly. "His body is shutting down. There's nothing more we can do." "How long?" she had asked, her voice breaking. "Maybe tonight. Maybe tomorrow morning. I'm very sorry." Now, as midnight approached, Max refused to leave. When the nurses changed shifts and the new nurse tried to take him away, Max growled. Not a mean growl, but a firm one that said, "I'm not leaving my boy." Tommy's mother put her hand on the nurse's arm. "Please, let him stay." The nurse looked at the boy, then at the dog, then at the mother. She nodded. At 2:17 in the morning, Tommy's breathing changed. It became slower, weaker. His mother grabbed his hand. "Tommy, baby, please stay with me. Please don't go." Max lifted his head. He could feel it too. Something was happening. The machine started beeping faster. Then the numbers on the screen began to drop. Doctors and nurses rushed into the room. They pushed buttons and checked tubes and spoke in urgent voices. And then it happened. The long, flat beep. The heart monitor showed a straight green line. Tommy's heart had stopped. "No!" his mother screamed. "Do something. Please." The doctors tried. They pressed on Tommy's chest. They injected medicine into his fore. They worked for 2 minutes. 3 minutes. For minutes. Nothing. "I'm sorry," the doctor finally said, looking at the clock. "Time of death." But he never finished that sentence. Because Max did something that no one expected. The big German, Shepard, jumped onto the hospital bed. Before anyone could stop him, he laid down right next to Tommy, pressing his warm body against the boy's cold one. He put his head directly over Tommy's heart, and then Max began to howl. It wasn't a normal howl. It was something ancient and powerful, a sound that seemed to come from deep in the earth itself. It made everyone in the room freeze. It made the mother stop crying. It made the doctor step back. Max howled like he was calling to something beyond this world. And in that moment, something impossible began to happen. Max's howl echoed through the hospital hallways. Nurses 3 floors down heard it. Patients in other rooms sat up in their beds. It was a sound that made your skin prickle and your heart squeeze tight. "Someone get that dog off the bed," one of the doctors shouted. "Right now." But when the nurse reached for Max, something stopped her. Maybe it was the look in the dog's eyes. Maybe it was the way he was positioned so carefully, so deliberately over Tommy's heart. Or maybe it was something else, something she couldn't explain. "Wait," she whispered. "We don't have time to wait," the doctor said. But even he had stopped moving. They were all frozen, watching. Max pressed his head harder against Tommy's chest. His eyes were closed now. His whole body seemed to be vibrating, like he was pouring every ounce of his energy, every piece of his love, into that one spot where Tommy's heart had stopped beating. Tommy's mother stood at the foot of the bed, her hands covering her mouth. Tears poured down her face. She was watching her son, her baby, and she knew the doctors had given up. She had heard them say the time of death. But Max hadn't given up. "Please," she prayed silently. "Please, God. Please." For 6 minutes, Tommy's heart had been still. 6 long minutes where no blood pumped through his body. 6 minutes where his brain received no oxygen. The doctors knew what that meant. Even if they somehow restarted his heart now, the boy would never be the same. The damage would be too great. But Max kept a position. He stopped howling, and now he was perfectly quiet, perfectly still, except for his own heartbeat. Thump, 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 strong and steady and alive. And then someone gasped. "Look at the monitor," Nurse Sarah said, pointing with a shaking finger. Everyone's eyes snapped to the screen. The flat green line that meant death was still there. But wait, was that a blip? A tiny bump in the line? "That's just interference," the doctor said. But his voice sounded uncertain. Another blip, then another. "That's impossible," the doctor breathed. The green line began to move. Not much at first, just little waves, like ripples on a pond. But then the waves grew bigger, stronger. Beep. One single beat from the heart monitor. Tommy's mother let out a sob. Beep, beep. 2 more. "His heart," Nurse Sarah whispered. "His heart is beating." The doctor rushed forward, pushing Max gently aside. But Max wouldn't move far. He positioned himself right next to Tommy, his eyes locked on the boy's face. The doctor pressed his stethoscope to Tommy's chest. His eyes went wide. "I can hear it. It's weak, but it's there. How is this possible?" 7 minutes. Another nurse said, checking the clock. His heart was stopped for 7 minutes. "Check his vitals." "Now," the doctor ordered. Suddenly the room was chaos again, but a different kind of chaos. Before, it had been the frantic chaos of trying to save a life that was slipping away. Now it was a shocked chaos of witnessing something that shouldn't be possible. Tommy's mother pushed through the crowd of medical staff. She grabbed Tommy's hand. "Baby? Tommy? Can you hear me?" Nothing. Tommy's eyes stayed closed. His face was still pale, but his chest was rising and falling. Not from the machine anymore, from his own lungs. His heart was beating. Not strong, but beating. "Brain activity?" the doctor asked. A nurse checked another machine. She looked up confused. "It's there. I'm seeing brain waves. They're weak, but they're there." "That's impossible," the doctor said again. After 7 minutes without oxygen. But the machines didn't lie. Tommy was alive. Max wagged his tail once. Just once. Then he settled down right next to the bed, his head resting on his paws, his eyes never leaving Tommy's face. The next hour was tense. Everyone waited. The doctors ran tests. They checked and double-checked the machines. They took blood. They looked at scans. And through it all, Max stayed right where he was. When anyone tried to move him, he would growl, not loud, not mean, but firm. His message was clear: "I'm not leaving." Finally, Tommy's mother sat down in the chair next to the bed. She was exhausted, scared, hopeful, and confused all at once. Nurse Sarah brought her a cup of coffee. "I've been a nurse for 20 years, Sarah said quietly. "I've never seen anything like this." "What do you think happened?" Tommy's mother asked. Sarah looked at Max. The dog's eyes were half closed now, but he was still alert, still watching. "I think," she said slowly, "that dog loved your son back to life." "Do you really believe that?" "I don't know what else to believe," Sarah answered. "The doctors can't explain it. Science can't explain it. But I saw what happened. We all did." She paused. "Love is powerful, more powerful than we understand." As the sun began to rise outside the hospital window, something else happened. Tommy's fingers twitched. His mother jumped up. "Tommy?" His eyes moved beneath his closed eyelids. Max's ears perked up. He lifted his head. "Doctor," Tommy's mother called. "He's moving." The doctor came running. He shined a light in Tommy's eyes. He checked reflexes. He listened to Tommy's heart again. "Impossible," he muttered for the third time that night. And then, as the morning light filled the room with gold, Tommy's eyes opened. They were foggy at first, confused. He blinked slowly. His mother was crying and laughing at the same time, squeezing his hand. "Mom!" Tommy's voice was so quiet it was almost silent. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Tommy turned his head slowly. His eyes found Max. A tiny smile appeared on his pale lips. "Max," he whispered. "Good boy." Max's tail began to wag. Harder and harder. His whole body wiggled with joy. He tried to jump on the bed, but the nurses held him back. "Easy, boy," Nurse Sarah said, laughing through her own tears. "Give him space." But Tommy reached out his hand. "Max, come." They let the dog get close. Max very gently licked Tommy's fingers. Tommy's smile grew bigger. Over the next 3 days, something became clear. Tommy was going to be okay. Not just okay. He was going to be completely fine. No brain damage. No lasting effects. The doctors couldn't understand it. They ran every test they could think of. Everything came back normal. "It's a miracle," one doctor finally admitted. "I have no other word for it." And through those 3 days, Max never left. The hospital bent their rules and let him stay. He wouldn't eat unless Tommy ate. He wouldn't sleep unless he could see Tommy breathing. When Tommy had nightmares and woke up scared, Max was there, pressing his nose against Tommy's hand to remind him, "You're safe. I'm here." The nurses called him the miracle dog. Other patients asked to meet him. News reporters wanted to come to the hospital to tell the story. But Tommy's mother said no to the reporters. This wasn't a story for TV. This was something sacred, something private. This was about love in its purest form. On the 4th day, the doctor said the words everyone had been waiting for. "Tommy can go home." Tommy's mother cried again, happy tears this time. Tommy smiled. And Max? Max's tail wagged so hard he knocked over a cup of water on the table. As they prepared to leave, Nurse Sarah came to say goodbye. She knelt down next to Max and scratched behind his ears. "You knew, didn't you?" she said softly to the dog. "You knew he wasn't done yet. You knew love was stronger." Max licked her hand, and in his way, without words, he seemed to say, "I never doubted it, not for 1 second." The morning they left the hospital, the sun was shining brighter than Tommy had ever seen it. Or maybe it just felt that way because he was alive to see it. Max walked right beside the wheelchair as the nurse pushed Tommy toward the exit. Hospital rules said patients had to ride in wheelchairs when they left, even though Tommy insisted he could walk. Rules are rules, his mother said with a smile, but her hand never left Tommy's shoulder. She kept touching him, as if she needed to make sure he was real, that this wasn't all a dream. When they reached the parking lot, Tommy stood up from the wheelchair. His legs were a little wobbly. He'd been in bed for over a week, but Max pressed against his side, steady as a rock. Tommy held on to Max's collar with one hand and his mother's hand with the other. "Ready to go home, buddy?" Tommy asked Max. Max barked. It was a happy, loud bark that made other people in the parking lot turn and smile. The drive home was quiet. Tommy's mother kept looking at him in the rear-view mirror. Tommy sat in the back seat with Max's head resting on his lap. He stroked the dog's soft fur and watched the familiar streets pass by. When they pulled into their driveway, Tommy saw that someone had mowed their lawn. The flowers his mother planted in spring had been watered. The neighbors had been taking care of things while they were gone. "Welcome home," a voice called out. Mrs. Henderson from next door was standing on her porch, waving. She had tears in her eyes. "We're so happy you're back, Tommy." Other neighbors came out too. Mr. Rodriguez, the Kim family, even grumpy old Mr. Peters, who never smiled, was grinning from ear to ear. "Glad you're okay, kid," Mr. Peters called out, his voice rough. Tommy waved at them all. His mother whispered, "So many people prayed for you, Tommy. So many people love you." But as they walked the front door, Tommy knew the truth. Max had saved him. Max's love had been strong enough to pull him back from death itself. Inside the house, everything looked the same, but felt different. Tommy looked at the couch where he used to play video games, the kitchen table where he ate breakfast, the stairs leading up to his bedroom. All of it seemed special now, like treasures he'd almost lost forever. "Want to rest?" his mother asked. Tommy nodded. He was more tired than he wanted to admit. As they climbed the stairs, Max stayed right behind Tommy, close enough to catch him if he stumbled. When they reached Tommy's bedroom, Tommy stopped in the doorway. His room looked exactly like he'd left it. His books were stacked on the shelf. His baseball glove sat on the desk. His bed was made with his favorite blue blanket. But something was different. On his pillow was a new collar for Max, a bright red one with a silver tag. Tommy picked it up and read the tag. Max, the hero who never gave up. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. Happy tears. He looked at his mother. "I had it made while we were in the hospital," she said softly, "because it's true." Tommy knelt down and put the new collar on Max. The dog sat perfectly still, his tail wagging slowly. When Tommy finished, Max licked his face, making him laugh. "Thank you, boy," Tommy whispered into Max's fur. "You saved me. You brought me back." Max's answer was to stay close, the way he always had, the way he always would. That night, as Tommy lay in his own bed for the first time in weeks, Max did something he'd always done. He jumped up and curled at the foot of Tommy's bed. But this time, Tommy's mother didn't tell him to get down. She just smiled. "He can sleep wherever he wants," she said. "He's earned it." Tommy felt Max's warm weight on his feet. He heard his mother whisper a prayer of thanks, and he realized something important. He'd been given a second chance at life, and he wasn't going to waste a single day of it. The next few weeks were strange and wonderful. Tommy couldn't go back to school right away. He needed to rest and build his strength. But friends came to visit. They brought cards and drawings and stories about everything he'd missed. And Max became Tommy's shadow. Wherever Tommy went, Max followed. When Tommy sat on the porch, Max sat beside him. When Tommy played catch in the backyard, Max brought the ball back. When Tommy had bad dreams about the hospital, Max would sense it and jump on the bed, pressing close until Tommy felt safe again. He's different now, Tommy told his mother one afternoon. They were sitting in the backyard, watching Max chase butterflies. He watches me more, like he's making sure I'm okay. His mother nodded. He almost lost you. I think he's making sure it never happens again. Tommy thought about that. He remembered the stories his mother had told him, how Max had found his way to the hospital, how he'd refused to leave, how he'd laid on Tommy's chest when his heart stopped. Mom, Tommy asked, do you think Max knew? Do you think he knew he could save me? His mother was quiet for a moment. I don't know if he knew, she finally said, but I think he had to try. Love makes you do impossible things. If you've been touched by this story of loyalty and love, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe for more stories that remind us of the miracles that happen when we never give up on the ones we love. 1 month after coming home, Tommy's doctor wanted to see him for a checkup. Tommy was nervous. What if something was wrong? What if the miracle wasn't permanent? But when the doctor finished all his tests, he sat back in his chair and shook his head in wonder. Tommy, you're completely healthy. Not just healthy, you're perfect. Your heart, your brain, everything. It's like none of it ever happened. Except it did happen, Tommy said quietly. Yes, the doctor agreed. It did, and I still can't explain it. He looked at Tommy seriously. You're very lucky, young man. I know, Tommy said, but he was thinking. It wasn't luck. It was Max. That night, Tommy made a decision. He got out a piece of paper and some markers, and he wrote a letter, not to a person, to Max. Dear Max, he wrote in his best handwriting. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for loving me so much that you wouldn't let me go. You are the best friend anyone could ever have. I promise I will take care of you for the rest of your life, just like you took care of me. Love, Tommy. He folded the letter and put it in a special box under his bed. Someday, when he was grown up, he would read it again and remember. Max, lying on the floor next to Tommy's desk, thumped his tail against the carpet. He didn't need to read words to understand. He could feel Tommy's love, just like Tommy could feel his. Years would pass. Tommy would grow up, go to school, make new friends, have adventures. But he would never forget the night his heart stopped and the dog who brought him back. And Max? Max would live a long, happy life, always by Tommy's side, always ready to protect him, always reminding him that love is the strongest force in the universe. Because that's what the miracle had taught them all. Love doesn't give up. Love doesn't quit. Love doesn't accept death as the final answer. Love fights. Love stays. Love wins. And sometimes when love is pure enough and strong enough and brave enough, love can work miracles that no doctor or scientist can explain. As Tommy climbed into bed that night, Max jumped up and took his usual spot at Tommy's feet. Tommy's mother came in to kiss him goodnight. I love you, Tommy, she said. I love you too, Mom. She turned off the light, but before she closed the door, she looked back at the boy and the dog. In the moonlight streaming through the window, she could see them both, her son, alive and healthy, and the dog who had refused to let him die. Thank you, Max, she whispered. Thank you for my miracle. Max lifted his head and looked at her. In his eyes, she saw something ancient and knowing, something that said, I would do it again, 1,000 times, forever. Tommy reached down and scratched Max behind the ears. Good night, boy, he said sleepily. Best friend forever. Max's tail wagged slowly in the darkness, and as they both drifted off to sleep, the house was filled with something you couldn't see but could definitely feel. The power of love so strong that not even death could break it. The miracle wasn't just that Tommy survived. The miracle was that love itself had proven to be stronger than anything in this world. And that's a miracle worth believing in. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to hear more incredible true stories about the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Because sometimes the most powerful miracles come from the purest love.